My sister stood in front of a room full of her friends, coworkers, and family, holding the small box I had brought. She tilted it like it was something ridiculous, smiled, and said, "This one's from my sister. She can't even afford diapers, but hey, let's see what she managed." People laughed. My mother laughed the loudest. I felt every part of me shrink. My cheeks burned, my hands went cold, and my son, Noah, just 8 years old, looked up at me from his chair, confused, hurt, and a little scared. I didn't say anything. I wanted to leave. I wanted to vanish. But then, right as I reached for his coat, Noah stood up. He picked up his backpack from under the table, walked quietly to the front of the room, and placed something down next to the pile of gifts. Everyone stopped talking. No one moved. He looked straight at my sister and said, "This is from my mom. And it's from Grandpa, too." The room went still. My sister froze. My mother's smile dropped. And when they opened that box, the mood in that room changed forever. Let me tell you what was inside and why it meant more than any gift money could buy. I wasn't supposed to be a mother. That's what people used to whisper, not because I was reckless or young, but because I wasn't the one anyone pictured with a baby in her arms. That was always Lana, my younger sister, the pretty one, the smart one, the one who did things right. She went to college, got a degree in marketing, landed a sleek job downtown, married a guy who wears loafers without socks, and now she's pregnant. Perfect timing, perfect venue, perfect life. Me? I had Noah when I was 23. His father left before I was even out of the hospital. I raised him alone, without help, while juggling jobs that barely covered rent. I cleaned houses during the day and worked a grocery stock shift at night. I didn't have anyone to lean on, not even my mom. She made it clear early on that I was the daughter who needed help, the one who was always one bad decision away from wrecking her life. I stopped asking her for anything years ago. Dad was the only one who saw me differently. William Carter wasn't a loud man, but he had this quiet way of making me feel capable, even when I was a mess. He'd show up to fix a leaky faucet without being asked. He taught Noah how to hammer nails into scrap wood and called him Little Chief. He never said it out loud, but I know he was proud of me. He passed away last year after a long, slow fight with cancer. The grief is still thick. Sometimes I forget he's gone and catch myself about to text him a photo of Noah's school project. But when Lana announced her pregnancy and sent out invitations for her baby shower, I had mixed feelings. I was happy for her, really. Despite everything, she's my sister. I wanted to show up, support her, and maybe feel like I was part of the family again, even just for an afternoon. I wasn't expecting warmth, but I wasn't expecting cruelty either. Noah was excited. He asked if we could bring a gift. I told him we would, even though I wasn't sure how I'd make that happen. Our budget didn't include extras, but I had a soft blanket I had crocheted years ago when Noah was a baby. It was still in great condition, folded in a storage bin. I washed it, wrapped it neatly, and added a handwritten note. It wasn't store-bought, but it was from the heart. I hoped she'd see that. The day of the baby shower, I put on my best jeans and a clean blouse. Noah wore his button-down shirt and khakis. We took the bus. The shower was held at a fancy event hall outside the city. Glass walls, floral centerpieces, catered brunch. Everything screamed money. When we walked in, people barely glanced at us. Lana was glowing in her designer dress. She was surrounded by tall women in heels, laughing over mimosas. I spotted my mom near the food table. She waved us over but didn't hug me. Just a tight smile and a glance at our small gift bag. "Oh, how sweet," she said flatly. Noah hugged her and she ruffled his hair before turning back to a conversation with one of Lana's friends. We sat at a side table. I poured Noah some punch and tried not to notice how no one joined us. I reminded myself we weren't there for anyone else. We were there for Lana. Eventually, Lana stood up to open presents. People clapped and oohed at every fancy bottle, warmer, and luxury diaper bag. When she got to our box, I saw her glance at the tag. Her lips curled into a half smile I recognized too well. She held the box in one hand like it weighed nothing and said, "This one's from my sister. She can't even afford diapers, but let's see what she managed." It hit like a slap. I froze. There were laughs. My mother was one of them. I felt a rush of heat crawl up my neck. Noah was staring at me. I didn't want him to see me cry, so I just smiled at him and said, "It's okay, sweetheart. Let's get ready to go." But Noah didn't move. He just kept staring at the front of the room. Then I watched him reach down and pull something out of his backpack. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was a drawing or a toy. I didn't know what he was planning. I didn't know that he had been holding on to something I didn't even realize we still had. And I certainly didn't know that my son, 8 years old and barely tall enough to reach the gift table, was about to change everything. Noah stood up from his chair with a quiet determination I didn't recognize. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. It looked nothing like the shiny, glittery gifts stacked around the room. I called his name under my breath, but he didn't even glance back. He just walked, steady and straight, toward the front. People started noticing. Conversations dropped into murmurs, then into silence. Lana paused mid-laugh as she turned and saw him. My mother tilted her head with a confused smile, the kind people give kids when they're not sure what they're about to do. Noah stepped right up to the gift table, looked at Lana, and said clearly, "This is from my mom. And it's from Grandpa, too." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. I saw shoulders straighten and heads turn. Lana's mouth opened slightly like she was going to respond, but nothing came out. I stood up too. I wanted to walk to him, take his hand, explain whatever this was so no one could turn it into another joke. But something told me to wait. Lana looked down at the box. It was small, barely big enough to hold a pair of socks. The wrapping was uneven, clearly done by a child. Still, she reached for it. As she pulled off the paper, the quiet deepened. Inside was a folded piece of stationery and an old silver rattle. Tarnished, worn, but beautiful. The kind of thing you don't see in stores anymore. Lana held it up, confused, then looked at the letter. My mother leaned in to read over her shoulder. I could see her eyebrows lift as she scanned the page. The letter was written in my father's handwriting. That hit me in the chest like a hammer. I hadn't seen that rattle since we packed up Dad's things after the funeral. I thought it had gone into storage or maybe even been donated. I had no idea Noah had kept it, and I definitely didn't know about the letter. My mom took the paper from Lana's hands and began reading it out loud. "To my next grandchild," she read. Her voice cracked on the word next. People shifted in their seats. Some of Lana's friends were now leaning forward, their laughter replaced by stillness. "I may not be around to meet you, but I wanted to give you something. This rattle has been in our family for 3 generations. I gave it to my daughter, Celine, when she had her son. Now it's yours." I watched as Lana's hands slowly lowered. She was staring at the rattle again. My mother continued reading. "Family isn't about who has the biggest house or the most money. It's about who shows up, who sacrifices, who forgives. I hope when you grow up you treat people with kindness, no matter what they have or don't have. You'll learn soon enough, gifts come in many forms." By the time she finished, you could hear the air conditioning humming through the ceiling. That's how quiet the room had become. Lana was pale. Her fingers curled tightly around the letter. My mother didn't look at me, but I saw the way she blinked, fast and sharp as if trying to hold something in. Noah turned to look at me. I smiled, but I was still frozen. My throat was tight and my hands trembled. I had brought a recycled blanket to a baby shower full of money, but my son brought something no one could match. Our history, our heart, our truth. I didn't know what to do next. Apologize? Take him and leave? But before I could move, Lana did something I didn't expect. She stepped around the table and walked over to Noah. Then, in front of everyone, she knelt and hugged him. Not a polite pat, not a performance. A real hug. One that held on. "Thank you," she said softly. "I didn't know he left something like this. I didn't know." Noah nodded once and walked back toward me. I crouched to hug him, and when I held him, it was like something inside me cracked open. Not in a painful way, more like a dam finally giving way. There wasn't applause, there weren't more jokes, just silence and then quiet conversation, and finally, a strange kind of peace. I didn't expect to be respected that day. I just didn't want to be humiliated. But my son, he reminded everyone, including me, what it means to show up with love, even when the world doesn't make space for you. After Noah handed over that box and the letter was read, I stood there like the ground had shifted beneath me. I wasn't embarrassed anymore. I wasn't angry. I was stunned. Because while I had been trying to survive, my son had been watching everything, taking it all in, and quietly planning to protect me in a way I didn't think an 8-year-old could. The hug from Lana had come and gone. The tension in the room had drained out, replaced by a thick, awkward quiet. I sat back down and pulled Noah close. He didn't say anything. He just leaned his head against my shoulder and let me hold him. I should have been proud in that moment, and I was. But there was also something else. Guilt. Not because of anything I had done wrong, but because I realized how often I had underestimated both of us. I had been so focused on getting through each day that I forgot we had more to offer than struggle. Noah reminded me that our value didn't need to be proven by how much we had or how polished we looked. As people started to chat again, I kept thinking back to the letter, that rattle, the things I had left behind in a box when we cleaned out my father's room. I remembered that day clearly. My mother had barely spoken. Lana didn't stay long. It was Noah who helped me carry things to the garage. I hadn't noticed at the time that he had taken the rattle and the letter. He must have found them in one of the drawers. I never asked, and he never told me. Later that night, I asked him why he brought the gift without telling me. We were sitting on his bed. He was in his pajamas, his stuffed dinosaur under one arm. "Because you always give people everything, Mom, and they don't see it," he said. "I wanted them to see it this time." I didn't cry right then. I just kissed the top of his head and sat with him until he fell asleep. But I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. It echoed inside me, louder than anything Lana had ever said. That night, I stayed up going through old photos and cards. I found more letters from my dad, scribbled notes in the margins of newspaper clippings, doodles he'd left in the corners of envelopes. He'd written my name more times than I could count. I had spent years thinking I wasn't enough, but here it was, evidence that I had always mattered to someone. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to hide from my family anymore. I wasn't going to pretend like I didn't care about how they treated me. I was going to show up differently for myself and for Noah. I called my mom that afternoon. She answered with her usual clipped voice. "I wanted to say thank you," I told her, "for reading the letter." She was quiet. Then she said, "I didn't know he wrote that." I didn't either, but he did, and Noah saved it. There was another pause. Then, softly, she said, "He's a good boy." "He is, and I'm doing my best to raise him right." "I know," she said, and that was the first time in years I believed she meant it. I didn't expect a complete change overnight. I didn't expect her to suddenly become the kind of mother who hugs and says sorry, but I knew something had shifted. She heard my father's words as clearly as I did, and maybe for the first time she saw me the way he always had. Lana texted me later that week. She said she'd kept the letter and the rattle on the baby's dresser. She thanked me again, said she wanted her child to know about our father. I didn't press for more. That was enough. But more than anything, I felt different. I stood taller. I looked people in the eye again. And not because anyone else had given me permission, but because my son had. He reminded me who I was, what I came from, and that the love we carry, even when it's quiet and hidden in plain brown paper, has a weight that no one can laugh away. I didn't expect to hear from Lana again so soon, but just a few days after the baby shower, she asked if I could come over. She said she wanted to talk. No emojis, no awkward exclamation points, just a plain message with a time and address. I stared at the screen, unsure if I should go. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I was tired of making the first move, tired of showing up to places where I wasn't welcome. But this time, it felt different. Not like a demand, but an invitation. So I said yes. I brought Noah with me. When we arrived at her apartment, the place smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, like she had tried to make it warm on purpose. There were baby clothes folded neatly on the couch, a crib against the wall, and on the dresser near the window I saw it. My father's rattle and his letter, now framed and upright like something sacred. Lana opened the door and gave Noah a soft smile. Then she turned to me and asked if we could talk privately. Noah went to the kitchen where her husband was making hot chocolate. I followed her into the nursery. She sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed her hands together. For a moment, she didn't speak. Finally, she said, "I was cruel." At the shower. I meant it as a joke, but I knew it would sting. That was the point. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to hear the rest. She took a deep breath. I've been jealous of you, Celine. I never said it out loud before because it felt ridiculous. Everyone always said I was the one who had it all together. But you have something I don't. You raised a child who would walk into a room full of strangers, speak from his heart, and make grown adults stop and think. That doesn't come from luck. That comes from you. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. She glanced at the framed letter. When Dad passed, I shut down. I didn't want to admit how much I needed him, but I think I hurt you worse because I tried to pretend like he never favored anyone. He did. He favored you, and I hated it because deep down I knew you earned it. I stepped forward and sat next to her. The room was quiet except for the hum of the heater. I could smell the soft scent of baby lotion. I didn't want to compete with you, I said finally. I just wanted us to be sisters. She nodded, tears starting to form. I don't want to compete anymore either. We sat there for a while without speaking. The silence was full, not empty. Then she asked if she could tell her baby about our dad, not just about the rattle, but about how he used to sneak candy to Noah, how he showed up to parent-teacher nights, even when I couldn't get off work, how he always told Noah bedtime stories with the same silly voice. She wanted her child to know that kind of love, too. I told her yes, of course. When we came back to the living room, Noah was curled up on the couch, a mug of hot chocolate in his hands, chocolate on his upper lip. Lana knelt in front of him and said, "You know, when your cousin is born, I'm going to tell them about you. How brave you were. How much you love your mom." Noah gave a small smile and nodded. On the way home that night, he asked me if Lana was still mad. "No," I said. "I think she just finally saw things the way they really are." It wasn't about the letter or the rattle alone. It was about what they represented, our family's history, our love, our pain, and our worth. It was about being reminded that dignity doesn't come from status or wealth. It comes from how we carry ourselves, especially when no one's clapping. I looked out the window of the bus as we rode back. The city lights blurred into streaks. I thought of my dad and what he might say if he could see us now. I think he'd say, "You did good, kid." And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. After that night at Lana's apartment, something subtle but undeniable began to shift between us. We weren't suddenly best friends. We didn't start texting heart emojis or calling every day. But the tension, that quiet current of competition and judgment that had always buzzed underneath our conversations, was gone. A week later, Lana invited me to a family dinner at my mom's house. At first, I hesitated. I hadn't sat at that table in over a year. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to a place where I'd been dismissed so many times. But Noah wanted to go, and I reminded myself that showing up wasn't just about forgiving others. It was about choosing to be seen on my own terms. We brought a homemade lasagna. I didn't dress up, but I wore something I felt good in. When we walked in, my mom was setting the table, and to my surprise, she smiled like she meant it. "You cooked?" I asked, gently teasing. She looked at me and said, "You inspired me. You always did more with less." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded and helped her set the last few plates. Dinner wasn't perfect. There were moments where the conversation stalled, moments where it felt like everyone was trying too hard. But there was also laughter. And Noah sat beside my mother, telling her all about his science project, and she listened. Really listened. Later that night, when we got home, Noah asked, "Are we a real family now?" That question hit me harder than anything else. "Yes," I said. "We always were. But now I think they're finally starting to see it too. The truth is, for years I carried shame I didn't deserve. I measured my worth against everyone else's achievements, thinking I was behind, that I'd failed somehow. It's easy to believe that when the world rewards perfection and money and status. But what I learned, what Noah reminded me, is that love, real love, is not measured in price tags or applause. It's measured in presence, in effort, in the quiet things you do when no one is watching. My father knew that. He didn't raise me with big speeches or expensive gifts. He raised me with patience and faith. When he left that letter and that rattle behind, he wasn't just giving something to the next baby in the family. He was passing down a value, a truth, a reminder that some things are too important to be forgotten or buried in bitterness. In the weeks after the baby shower, Lana and I talked more. Slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding. She asked questions about my life that she'd never cared about before. She came to know his school play, brought her husband, even stayed afterward to take us out for ice cream. I still don't know if our relationship will ever be effortless, but it's becoming honest, and that's more than I ever thought possible. My mom, too, has changed in small ways. She's softer with Noah now. She asks me how I'm doing without it sounding like an obligation. Sometimes she still says things that sting, but I've learned to call it out. And she listens. That's new. But the biggest change wasn't in them. It was in me. I stopped apologizing for who I am. I stopped shrinking in rooms where I felt like I didn't belong. I no longer carry that voice in my head that says I'm falling short, because if my son, with all his innocence and clarity, could see my worth so clearly, then I owe it to both of us to believe it too. And every time I doubt myself, I think of that moment, that crowded room, my sister laughing, my mother smirking, and then my son standing up, walking forward, speaking for both of us when I didn't have the strength. That was the moment everything changed. Because love doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be real. And sometimes, the smallest gift carries the deepest legacy. So to every single mom out there, to anyone who's ever been looked down on or laughed at for not having enough, don't let that noise drown out your worth. You are enough. You've always been enough. And sometimes it takes a child's voice to remind the world just how powerful love really is. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt overlooked or underestimated, or if you've ever had someone in your corner when no one else believed in you, take a second to like this video. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that quiet strength and real love matter more than anything. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had a moment where someone stood up for you when you couldn't? Drop a comment below. I read everyone, and your stories matter here. And if you want more true stories that dig deep into what makes us human, family, forgiveness, growth, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for being here. You are seen and you are valued.